I've had a very stressful morning, so I'm just doing a bit of knitting. Hello and welcome to Fun It's Sake, the Valentine's special. I am knitting on camera, but I honestly don't have the best setup for like an actual knitting podcast for that because I don't have a pretty wingback chair. And I can't really move about in my room because I've got like two desks, so I'm just kind of shoved in the corner. If I do it like this, you can see. I'm currently knitting a Call the Midwife tea cosy because I'm knitting one tea cosy a month. And in January, I did do two tea cozies, so I'm ahead of myself, which is good. This episode is obviously Valentine's special, and I sent out requests for people to answer why they love knitting. Like, why do you love knitting? At the end of this podcast, there will be some listener answers to why they love knitting too. So I'm going to start with an obvious one, which you're probably thinking too as you're watching along. Yarn is pretty. Yarn shops are pretty. Knitting shops are pretty. Yeah, it's just all so nice to look at. And then when you see it on TV, like a ball of yarn, it just looks so nice and pretty. And yarn shops are also lovely to go into. Like, they're cosy, they're colourful, everyone's so nice because everyone's in their happy little place. Number two, it's just balls and sticks. Like, if you simplify it, it's just balls and sticks. And it's like, it's just amazing, all the things you can make with it. Yeah, I don't know. It is magical, isn't it? Number three is it's okay to start again. I love knitting because if a knitting project goes wrong, for some reason, I don't get stressed or upset. I just frog it and start again. Or sometimes it goes in the bin. But yeah, when it comes to knitting, I don't mind starting again. Like, it doesn't seem to frustrate me frogging out a project. And I wish I could bring this aspect into my non-knitting life, so like day-to-day tasks, because I get so frustrated at anything. But for some reason, with knitting, I feel calm. I don't know. It's very strange. I don't know how I'm going to bring that into my day-to-day life, but I really want to because I'm just like a big mess. But when I'm knitting, I'm cool and collected. I honestly don't know why. Number four is unique gift giving, and that just says it all. I love giving things that I've made. I love receiving things people have made. And the presents are more fun to knit because of that. And the process of buying presents, like making presents, but the whole process of like thinking it's someone's birthday or Christmas or whatever is just made nice because you can just knit them something. Like, often buying presents can be a bit like stressful, especially at Christmas when you've got to go into real life places. So for knitting, I love the fact that you can just turn to it for gifts and you can be in your cosy little house and not have to leave. I really think that lockdown's had a big effect on me not wanting to leave the house. Oh, God. So yeah, there's the aspect of being able to go to it whenever you want for a present, and there's also the aspect of it being unique. Like, you give someone a gift you've knitted and it's unique. It's the only one in the world. Even if you make the same pattern with the same yarn, it's going to be different tension, or there's going to be something very different about it. So yeah, I really, really love that. And you also get to pick the colours and you get to have 100% say in it. Whereas if you're buying someone a present, you might not like it. You might like it like 80%. There might be one bit of colour you don't like in it. But when you're making a present, like knitting a present for someone, you get to choose every single thing about it. And you get to choose what pattern you want to do, what colours and what wool, like cotton, wool, alpaca. You get to choose every single thing that goes into this one present. And that is why I love knitting. Also, I love receiving knitted gifts. I don't tend to receive many knitted gifts because I'm a knitter. So I think as knitters, we need to knit other people that knit presents, because it is nice to receive something knitted. Before I learned how to knit, 2012, I received the best present off mum. Like, it wasn't a birthday present, it wasn't a Christmas present, it was just like, I've made this. And I'm going to put a picture in a minute, but at the moment you're probably thinking, oh, it was something like small or, you know. It was, it was a giant goldfish. I had a goldfish at the time, carrot, and mum was like, oh, I've made you this. I was like, this is amazing. And then since then I wanted to knit. So 2012, I learned 5 years later. But yeah, that was the thing that wanted me to get into knitting, like a unique gift. And I think that might happen with other people as well. They get something and be like, oh, this is amazing, it's knitting, I can do this for myself and for others. I think giving a hand knitted gift just spreads love. No, honestly, giving a hand knitted gift is just, it does spread love, and it is a much nicer way to gift someone. Not a much nicer, it depends. You might be a knitter and not knit things for people. But for me personally, I love knitting presents. I do it for everyone's birthday and Christmases and stuff. And it is, for me, it's nicer than buying something. It's hard when you live with someone and you want to make a present for them. So I've made many presents for my boyfriend, and it's really hard to hide the presents. But I made him a lamb for Christmas, and if you're not new here, you've been here for a while, you know all about the lamb. But yeah, he loves that, and that was really fun to make. Eventually, it was fun to make. And that was, again, I got to pick the yarn and the colours, and I treated myself to some gorgeous yarn for it. So you're gifting yourself the yarn, nice experience in it, nice experience wrapping it, and nice experience giving it to the person that you love. I say nice wrapping it because usually I'm not into wrapping. I just bing bang wash it, whatever, like brown paper, tape, that's it. No ribbons, nothing. But for Stephen's lamb I did brown paper, red and white Christmas string, and then I kept the yarn wrap from the, what are they called, the things that go around yarns? The yarn wrap, the card around the yarn, the paper around the yarn. I kept the paper that goes around the yarn, and I wrote a little gift tag on the back, and I do that for a few presents, and it's just nice. Number 5. Colour! No, seriously, colour. I know I've got like a dark blue wall and like a dark top on, but like my wall's yellow, that's colour. But yeah, colour. Colour, especially in winter, because everyone's wearing grey or black. So when you're knitting, you can just have a pop of colour on you, like a scarf or a hat or some little gloves, and even socks. You can just peek them at the top of your boots. But colour all the time. Since I've gotten to knitting, I've like explored a lot more colours, and I have a lot more colours that are in my favourite colours. Blue's still my favourite, but when I come to knit now, I knit in colours I never liked before. I had a very before I knit, I had a very the colours I would buy with certain colours. When I'm knitting a scarf or something or a toy, my brain goes to weird colours first rather than the colour the pattern suggests. So yeah, colour for knitting, it just brings the world a bit more happiness, and it just makes the world bright. I don't know, that sounds really lame, but it's very, very true. Like, you can tell something's hand knit as well, which is great, which is why I love that. So it's colourful, and if it's got a little mistake in it, you know, it's nice because it's a handmade thing. That kind of goes in with the present giving as well, doesn't it? Like, if you've got a little flaw in it, you're going to be like, oh my God, there's a big flaw. But then someone else is going to be like, oh my God, this is amazing. It's the best thing ever. So why did I do that voice? For God's sake. But yeah, like with gift giving, you make things and you see so many flaws, but then the person who gets it just loves it and sees no flaws at all, which is something I love about knitting as well. And then the colour especially, just colour all the time. Colour, basically. In my notes I just put colour. So, yeah. Number 6 is phone-free time. I honestly love knitting for that. Especially in public, when I see people on their phones, like waiting for a train or in the waiting room or something like that, and they're on their phone, and I can just get my knitting out and be in my own little bubble. And honestly, I get really bored on my phone as well in public. And I use paper to mark off rows, and that's another great way of staying away from my phone, because I used to use my phone to keep track, but now I use paper. So yeah, I do enjoy having phone-free time, because At times I just feel like I'm living in a Black Mirror episode. So to go away from that and have like an old-fashioned thing to do, I actually properly love. I can zone in properly. I can feel happy, content, relaxed. I don't feel relaxed on my phone. It just stresses me out. Technology. I hate technology. In my last podcast, I did electronics versus paper. And it was so obvious that I love paper more than electronics. Like, it was so obvious. So yeah, phone-free time, that's important to me. I don't know why, because it's normal to be on your phone now, but for me, I can't take selfies in public, and I can't, like... And then if I'm on a train, it's like, are people watching over my shoulder, like, what I'm on? I sound a little bit crazy, don't I? Oh. Obviously, you must know this. You're knitting and you think, oh, I'll just check my phone. That happens quite a lot, so I really want to get out the habit of doing that. But yeah, I can put a nice film on or a TV show and I can knit. And I can pay attention to the TV show or the film or the podcast, and I can also do some knitting. So I feel really productive and I'm enjoying myself. I'm relaxed and productive. And I always know my phone's there for bedtime. I need to delete TikTok. Number 7 is watching people knit. I can do no knitting and watch someone knit, and it's just the most relaxing thing to watch, which is why I wanted to do some knitting on this podcast. Not like here, but actual knitting. So I think I'm going to try and work something out for that, because I really want a wingback chair. This is like an office boring chair. But I follow one lady, engineering knits, and she has like this is what made me want to have a wingback chair. She's got a wingback chair, and she's got the perfect camera set up. She just sat chilled back and she's just doing the knitting. I'm just sat really forward. Yeah. Anyway. When you're not knitting and you're not having very free time, you're browsing through Instagram and you see people knitting on the reels or whatever they're called. And knitting videos are so relaxing. Like, it's just... You can watch someone knit for ages and not become bored. Yeah, there's just something... I'm thinking now in my head, and I can picture all the knitting videos I've seen through the years, and it's just a nice thing to watch. Just relaxing. And even if it's just a garter stitch, that is still relaxing. I think it's the act of, like, the hands. I don't know, like... I'm very hands-on with everything, and I'm a practical learner. I'm very hands-on, like hands-on job. I mentioned in my last episode, electronics versus paper, that I like touching things, which is why I probably like watching hands. I mean, it's not like feet. It's not like a hand fetish. It's just hands. I like seeing people use their hands. Right, I did have a nice script for this, but I'm in a weird mood today, and I think that is coming across. Right, anyway. Number 8, it changed my life. I don't know how to talk about this, but when I was learning how to knit, Mum was like, it's going to change your life. And I was like, what do you mean? But now I'm like, oh, it has changed my life. I cannot imagine not knitting now. I can't... What did I do? I can't... It's like when a major life event happens to you. There's before the major life event, then there's after the major life event. And for me, like, there's like before the knitting and then after the knitting. And I just can't picture not knitting anymore. It did change my life. Sometimes not always for the best. As you know, you're knitting a project and you want to start another one before you're finished, and then you start that new project, and then you start another, and then your brain's constantly thinking of projects. So I would say that's the only downside to knitting, but at the same time, it's not a downside, because eventually you will make those projects, and it's important to write them down as well. But yeah, I like how knitting just keeps my brain active, and it did change my life. It made me more confident. As I say, with colours, I would stick to colours. When I was buying clothes, I would stick to just the usual colours. But when I'm making something now, I'm thinking, I'm going to have this forever, so I'm going to make it in like a really bright colour, or even if it's a grey, I'm going to make it in a really nice grey, or I'm going to add a bit of colour to it. I'm currently crocheting myself a grey cardigan, but then I've got like a little pop of purple on the ends for the ribbing. And before, I probably would be like, let's just buy a grey cardigan, which I have done. I had a grey cardigan and a black cardigan. The same cardigans, just different colours. And that was before I was knitting. So yeah, it definitely has changed my life. I think as a knitter, you understand what I mean by that. Like, if you've been knitting for years, like longer than me, like 20 years or whatever, 10 years, try and picture yourself before you knit. It's really hard. You just can't picture yourself, like, do you just sit and watch telly? Or you obviously sit on your phone, or before phone, like smartphones existed, do you just sit and watch telly? The fun 5 channels. Because obviously when you knit all the time, like anytime you can possibly knit, you knit. So when you try to think of yourself when you weren't knitting, it's like, seen, missing. So yeah, do let me know in the comments below if it has changed your life, because I feel like it has, for every knitter. I'm just going to go back to number 7 for a minute, because I've written my notes and I'm just ignoring them. Like I say, I'm in a weird mood. There's also watching other people knit, but then there's people talking about knitting. That is just nice. So watching people knit and listening to people talk about knitting, it's just, you just get that person. You might have never, it might be the first YouTube video you've watched with someone and they're talking about knitting, and you're like, oh my god, this is so nice. I like this person because she's talking about knitting, or he's talking about knitting. And then if you're following someone for ages and you get to see their knitting journey as well, yeah, I just general knitting talk and watching people knit is why I love knitting, because it really is like a shared thing that if you meet someone for the first time and they're a knitter, you instantly have a bond, which I love. So we're on number 9 now. It's classic. It's survived through everything, like wars, bombings, everything. I did some research for this, but as I've mentioned in my previous videos, I'm not a historian. So it's hard to say when knitting began because it degrades over time, but this historian believes that it began in Egypt between 500 and 1200 AD, and that is a long time ago. That's all I'm going to say on the subject. I'll pop a link below of where I read all this information. I'm not a historian and I don't want to get it wrong, but yeah, knitting has been around for years and years. God. But yeah, I'll pop the link below if you. It's really cool because there's some socks from like 500 AD or something, and it's like, that's amazing that knitting's been around for that long. The craft is surviving. The craft is going to survive forever, I think, if it's been going on for this long. Like, technology's changed, there's been industrial revolutions, there's been so many historic changes in politicians, there's been so many progressions throughout history, but knitting has stayed constant. Knitting fits into the world no matter what the world is like, which is why I love it. It was purely for practical reasons, which I love, that something so nice can be used for something so practical. Because I know it was for practical reasons, but I imagine they feel the same as us. They were knitting and enjoying it. And I was talking to my mum about her grandma, and she would, once she'd worn out a jumper, she would unravel that jumper and use the same yarn. So there was no waste at all in like knitting back in the day when it was used for practical reasons, which I love. It's universal still as well. So you look at a vintage pattern and you can knit that vintage pattern, and it will look, it's a drawing, but your knitted piece will look like the drawing in the vintage pattern. Like, nothing's really changed in terms of knitting. So much has changed in the world, but knitting stayed the same, stayed constant, which I love. And I also love that it was men who are traditionally known for knitting. Everyone always goes on about like it's a women hobby, it's a granny hobby, but actually men knit themselves fisherman jumpers when they were on the boats to keep themselves warm. And they would knit nets, fishing nets. It was known as a man's not even a hobby. It was known as a man's way to keep himself warm. It's not quite early, I think, but like in the 50s and the 60s or 70s, you would learn how to knit in school. So from Egypt to then, it was a way of living. Everyone knew how to knit. I've got a really funny story. So my mum's grandma would knit like really white jumpers, and then uh, her husband, so my mum's granddad, would come home after work and he's got grubby hands, and because he learnt how to knit in school, he would like to do a few rows on a jumper for her, which is lovely, but not if you're using white yarn, which she was a lot. So like white and cream yarn, she was making all grubby. It's like, it's sweet, but also get off my knitting. Number 10 is the knitting community and how wholesome it is. So when I was starting this channel, my boyfriend didn't think that knitting was a thing on YouTube, so I showed him some, and he was like, "It's so nice," and I was like, "Yep, it's a wholesome part of the internet," which it is. And you go to Knit and Natters, and they're wholesome, like people having cake and tea. And the knitting community is so welcoming. So you go to Knit and Natter, and you might be new there, and they welcome you with open arms. But yeah, they welcome you, and you feel instantly welcome. Because, like, it's the same with the yarn shops. You're in your happy place. You're doing your happy thing. And so are they. And it's like you feel like you can be yourself because you've instantly got a bond and something in common. And you can get a bit weird or a bit excited about knitting or yarn, and, like, it's okay because they will be excited and weird along with you, which I love. Number 11 is, I feel cool when people find out I knit. I'm not going to lie. I feel amazed when people find out that I can knit. Like... And obviously before I was knitting, my mum was a knitter, and I was like amazed when she made me that goldfish. I was like, wow. So when you're not a knitter, it is a cool thing if you know a knitter, because it's like, whoa. It looks like, when you're not a knitter, knitting looks impossible. And then if someone's doing it, you're like, whoa, that is amazing. And then they're making things they've worn, like socks and hats, and it's like, I made this, and then you're like, wow. So yeah. I just feel cool when people find out I can knit. Like crochet, yeah, maybe, but knitting. But knitting, it's just, there's a different coolness that comes along with being a knitter and being a crocheter. Number 12 is, it keeps my creativeness going. So since lockdown began, coronavirus, back when it was first beginning, I've had a creative block since then, and that's in terms of painting and drawing and things. But I've been creative because of knitting. And people always say creativeness is writing and art, but I think knitting and the craft world is very, very creative. Because you're thinking of different colours, different fabrics. Your brain is constantly thinking creatively for colours and textures, like what yarn you're going to use. And you might knit a pattern, but then you'll make it your own, which is very, very creative. Creative. You're knitting a pattern and you're making it your own way. So you add something like a button or another stitch or just something that is going to make it different, which is very creative. And even if you follow the pattern, the same colour, the same yarn, everything, it's still creative because you're just being creative. Like, I probably could have just said keeps my creativeness going. That's all I need to say. I don't know why I've gone so much into that because I was blah. Number 13 is my sweet, sweet style. No, seriously, since I've started to knit, I wear like different things and I feel more confident, and I have a certain style that I think you only have as a knitter. Yeah, my style has changed a lot and I'm loving it. Number 14 is, it's a big FU to my brain injury. So I had a brain injury in 2013, I learnt to knit in 2015, but in those 2 years between brain injury and learning to knit, I wanted to knit and I kept putting it off. Eventually I sat down to learn it and I picked it up straight away. Since then I've been good at knitting, like my tension was good, it's just all good. I'm constantly learning with my knitting, which is an FU to my brain injury. And in public, before knitting, I would get overwhelmed by noises. But with knitting, I can zone in and kind of switch the world off. Not all the time, but a lot more if I was to be on my phone in public without knitting. So yeah, I can zone into knitting in a noisy environment, and I can still hear the noise, but not as much as if I wasn't knitting. And I'm constantly challenging myself with knitting. So I've mentioned previously that I was trying to learn the magic loop, and I've learnt it, and I'm actually currently knitting a project using the magic loop. And I also learned provisional cast on for that, and that was just like yesterday. So there's so much to learn in the knitting world, and I want to learn it all. And it's okay, you don't have to learn it all, but if you're just like, if you just knit squares or scarves, that's honestly fine. But for me, like, I just want to learn it all and make everything. But yeah, I'm constantly challenging myself, and I love that. I have a brain injury, but like, it doesn't define me. Like, I live with it, get annoyed about it, get angry about it. But overall, I feel like the knitting is something I can always cling on to. If I'm having a bad day with my brain injury, my knitting's always there to go to. It's something I can do no matter what mood I'm in, no matter how tired I am. If I'm thinking about brain injury too much and how sad I am about it, I just go to my knitting and switch off, which is also that's also really good. So knitting, a big FU to my brain injury is being brave to learn, because with brain injury, a lot of people kind of give up, and I feel like knitting is keeping me going. It's keeping my brain going. It's just kind of pushing my brain injury aside, which I like. I've got something that defines me, and that is knitting, and my brain injury is here somewhere in the background, and my knitting is always in the foreground. So yeah, I'm also really thankful for knitting because of that. Yeah. Because with other aspects of my life, I find it really hard to do certain things, and learning new things, the information doesn't stick. But with knitting, it seems to stick. And I don't feel overwhelmed to learn something new when it comes to knitting. But with other things, I do feel overwhelmed to learn, because I'm just like, oh, I'm going to forget it. What's the point? But with knitting, I think it's because I've got the passion for knitting, so that's why I can keep learning.
Why do I knit? Because it soothes my troubled mind, and that's no lie. It's also very tactile and wonderful to touch, isn't it? Just squishy and lovely, and different stitches are pleasing to the eye as well as to the sense of touch. It's just a lovely, lovely thing. Also, it's a connection to, I suppose, people. My granny taught me to knit, and she and my granddad were the people who, in my life when I was a child, made me feel safe and loved. And it's a connection to her and them, and it triggers memories, good memories of them and how lovely they were. I taught my daughter to knit, so that's a connection with her, and it really truly is a lovely thing to talk to someone close to you who you love, who shares the same interests, and we talk about it a lot, and a lot actually, yes. So this connection to her, which is very wonderful, it kind of carries it on, doesn't it? I like, and I have done, and do a lot of other crafts, and although enjoyable, and I like the finished result, and I do like the process, the fact is I always come back to knitting. It is comforting, and even if you don't end up with a finished garment or toy or cushion or blanket, the process of knitting, the doing of knitting, just that in itself is really, I don't know what to say, it's just very, very, very pleasing. There you go. I'm sure I could say a lot more things and go into a lot more detail, but that's enough, I think, isn't it? I think it says it all.
Naomi, what a lovely way to celebrate Valentine's Day with your subscribers. I absolutely love knitting because it de-stresses me, calms me down, and it makes me more mindful and centred. It teaches me patience and the joy of creating beautiful things with my hands. The day does not feel complete if I haven't knit during the day. Hi, I love knitting. It brings me joy, meditation, and a lovely sense of purpose now I'm pretty much retired. I basically love to try a lot of crafts, so many to try and not enough time to try them. Just so exciting. Happy Valentine's, everyone. Thanks, Naomi.
Hello, Naomi at Naomi's Needles. My name is Barbara Stark from Nottinghamshire, and thank you for inviting people to share their knitting love for Valentine's. And here is my knitting Valentine. I love knitting because it is so creative and accessible. And as well as that, you get to play with beautiful yarns and colours and to produce something useful or beautiful at the end as well. What more could anybody ask? Good luck. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So yeah, thank you for watching. If you're new here, please like and subscribe to see the next episode, which is going to be F for finishing finishing works in progress. I'm going to be sharing all my works in progress, so oh God. And if you're not new here and you've been here for a while, thank you for watching, and yeah, thank you for watching and commenting on the previous videos, and I'm really enjoying talking to you guys in the comments. I'm just loving this whole YouTube thing. So yeah, thank you for watching, and Merry Valentine's Day. Bye.